Good morning, everyone. If it is Friday morning, it is Voice Chat Fridays. This is Lee Andrews with Akathame and Shyamala Prayaga, who is the founder and head of the Digital Assistant Academy. Boy, it is early this Friday morning. I don't know about you, Shyamala. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good, Lee. How are you doing?
Good. So today we're going to be talking about something that's actually quite serious. The word is thrown around everywhere, Shyamala. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody says that they teach it. Everybody says that they do it. And yet, when we see candidates in interviews, when we hear them in, close quarter, conversations and meetings, right? They don't get it, right? It's not there. And the word is storytelling. So part of our program is to teach people how to tell the story. We give them the formula, and then they spend weeks, if not months, practicing how to tell a story. So Shyamala, I want to hear from your perspective because you're a hiring manager. You speak to the C-level at Ford. You speak in front of thousands of people. I'm getting some feedback. Are you getting any feedback?
There's an echo, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that's about.
Let me mute myself. I'll unmute only when I have to speak. Let's try that.
But yeah, okay. Well, you're gonna have to speak in like 2 seconds. Okay. So let me just give you a little idea of why we're talking about this, because we know that we see these candidates and they're not getting the jobs. The reason that they're not getting the job isn't because they can't do the job or they do not want to do the job. The reason that they're not getting the position or the offer is because it's very difficult for them to articulate what they do, how they do it, the process that they take, and the outcome. So at the Academy, we spend an awful lot of time drilling that skill home. And Shyamala is going to talk to you about how she prepares when she talks to the C-suite at Ford, thousands of people in an audience at a conference, or one-on-one with her manager and her peers. The formula doesn't change, but what you say might. So Shyamala, if you would, and good morning, Voice, Spark, Alexa, and more. Welcome. We're happy to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
So Shyamala, first of all, what is the difference between speaking to those various audiences?
So, see, when you are speaking to any of these audiences, they come from a different level of understanding as you, right? So every person is different. So even if you're speaking to a UX designer or co-workers, they may not have 100% understanding of your project. So when you have to get to their level and speak. So you cannot speak at a very high level or you cannot speak too technical. And that is why it's very important to have that storytelling, like you mentioned. Now, the difference, if you are speaking to a high level management, like chief level management, of course, they have too many things going on. They are super busy. They don't have time to go through your entire background and history and everything, or they may not even have any understanding of the project or have very high level understanding. So when you have to speak with them, you have to speak at their level, because you need to make sure, like, if you were given 5 minutes to tell your story or to tell your concept or convince them, how would you do that? And it's really important to have at least the base. You need to give them some background. You need to tell them why you want. It has to be very strategic, very quick. The same thing if you are talking in a conference with hundreds and thousands of people, which I have done. In that kind of situation, people come from different backgrounds. Some are techie, some are very high level, some are very low level, some may come from a completely different background. So in that kind of situation, you have to make sure that the person who knows a lot more or who are technical doesn't get bored or feel like this is very basic, and people who are at basic level feel like this is too complicated for me or just going over. That is why there has to be a strategy in place. You need to make sure that you are catering to all of those. So you need to have a strategy in terms of how you present, how you communicate, and stuff like that. So throughout, even when you are talking to the management, hiring managers, right? The company have different process, the company have different culture. So when you are speaking with them, it is really important to understand, what they are looking for. So what I have seen many people trying to do is, I personally have worked at Amazon. So honestly, when I was interviewing for Amazon, I hardly knew about any of the 10 leadership principles Amazon has or any such things. I went to 13 rounds of interview and I was just doing my part of, doing stuff, being myself, just telling my story, my processes, and, when they were giving me design activities, I was just doing those things. And after joining Amazon, I found out that, okay, well, there are 10 leadership principles, and every individual is actually uh, gauged over those kind of leadership principles based on, which team they are working with. Now, what I see people doing is half understanding whatever they have. They will just take those leadership principles and they'll try to tell their story, mapping those leadership principles. So, for example, customer obsession is one of the leadership principles for Amazon. So, I start seeing people nowadays when they are telling their story, they will try to, feed in customer obsession somehow into their words and all of those things. It's very artificial when you're doing those things and trying to, just demonstrate the leadership principles in that way, because you are not being yourself, you're not telling your story in the right way. So that is why, you need to understand what the company is, what their process is, what their culture is, and all of those things. But at the same time, you have to see, like, how do you tell your story so it reflects completely honest version of yourself. Still the company feels like, okay, this person is genuine, or this person is worth or will be a team fit with us. So there's a difference.
Go ahead. You had another thought coming out.
Yeah, no, so I was saying there's a difference depending on which audience you're catering for, in the conference or hiring manager or a management level, or maybe, in a podcast when you're talking with people in a podcast. So
And I know that I'm throwing this question at you without any thought or preparation on your end. I have a list of things that I make sure when I teach people and observe and give feedback that that these are the 3 to 5 things that you want to accomplish, and these are the 1 or 2 things that you never want to go to. Right? You just never want to do it. In your mind, when you see or hear presenters, what are the things that are immediate turnoffs for you? What is just like nails on a chalkboard to you?
so couple of things, depending on which kind of audience we are talking about here, which kind of presenter we are talking about. If it was an interviewer, and interview kind of setup, in that kind of setup, if the person is just, I had a person who was just trying to boast, their capabilities, and they were like, I have done blah 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 blah, but they were not telling their story properly to me. They were not telling how they have achieved something. So when they started, I wrote 100 papers. I wrote a blog which has 50,000 plus viewers, and have, in Medium, and have 100 plus claps. Well, I can hire a writer to do that for me, right? So blog and all of those things are still fine. Those are some of your capabilities. But what is important is how you tell your story when I'm asking you a question. So when I ask people a question, I expect them to give me a proper answer, have a clear thought process, like from the problem to the solution, give me a clear thought process. Even when someone asks you, like, tell me about your background, I see people jumping all over the place. It could be a very simple answer. Like when you are telling about your background, tell them where are you now and what has, like how you came to where you are now. Start from there, or start from what I start seeing people doing is, they'll start their background from like many years back, like, okay, I graduated as a civil engineer, and from there I reached here, this that is excellent. You're telling your story in that way. But then what makes more sense is you tell your story like, okay, I am a product owner at Ford Motor Company and I do blah, blah, blah. And prior to this, I worked with this company, and this is how I gained my skill set. So tell the story in whatever way, but make it convincing. Sometimes what happens is when people start from the academic level and try to get to what they are doing or where they are now, they end up or mess up on too many things. The story is all over the place. So there has to be a clear thought process, like how you are telling about yourself, just the basic things like those. Or when I ask you a problem, like this happens often, like how do you, how do you resolve any kind of complications, or if there is a conflict in the team, how do you resolve that, or how do you fix that, or how do you work with that? Though these kind of questions comes pretty often, like people will ask. I've seen people saying, yeah, once I had this, I know how to mitigate the problem, and I can just do that. I'm very confident about myself, blah, 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 blah. Well, I'm not looking for that kind of answer. So basically, what I do when someone asks me that story is tell them my story. Tell them, like, okay, there was this project I was working on. There were two designers and a developer. And when we proposed the solution, the developer thought like this is way too complicated and was not ready to design that for us or develop that for us, and they had their own issues. So tell the story. Then what did I do? I did my research, I did my benchmarking, I came up my own solutions, and then told them like these are the possible ways we can solve it. And they were able to fix see one of those stories, one of those solutions, and they were like, okay, maybe we can do something about it. Tell your story in a way which people can understand and can relate to, and they will be able to understand what kind of person you are, what you talk, how you present yourself, how you articulate. Everything talks about your process and how you will be as a team member. And it's really important that you are constantly gauging all of those things. And I feel like there are great people out there. They have the functional skill sets required to become a conversational designer, a voice designer, a UX designer, or a developer, or a product manager, or any role they are looking for. The biggest thing which is missing is the non-functional skill set, which is equally important: communication skill, the growth mindset, or the openness, the collaboration, or the storytelling, or presenting yourself. How do you present yourself? How do you defend yourself? How do you make sure you are a team player? All of these are so important, and we don't focus on any of those things when we are teaching people, students, any kind of courses. And these are not the skill sets which are taught in school either.
You're a little passionate about this.
A lot. With the tone of my voice.
We're going to talk about why in just a second. Here's one of the things that I have been guilty of this one myself. Don't assume that everyone knows what's in your head, right? So a lot of times I'll hear UX designers, as they're showing me their portfolio and telling me how they've done their work, they skip over, they gloss over a lot of important information, and it's the path of how they got to where they're going, the challenges that they had to overcome, things that they had to learn. All of that incredible information is missing from their stories. So what is it that I think you're right. You mentioned mindset, communication mindset, defending your work, all these things. What is it, Shyamala, besides lots of practice and lots of coaching, that you tell yourself before you get on stage to say, I got to share it all. I got to tell them what I did. How do you mentally prepare for that? That's a big part of this. People get really nervous and they just shut down, or they talk too much.
Yeah, that is.
Anything about either.
Yeah, that's a very good question. You're randomly throwing at me, and I'm not prepared. So this is just the thing, right? So any kind of thing, I do a lot of my own homework. So what I will say is you need to clearly understand your audience. So every time I used to interview, I would actually see my interview panel and understand each of their background and where they are coming from, what they do. When I'm doing that, when I'm presenting in conferences and stuffs, I would take the previous attendee list from these people just to understand what kind of audience I am dealing with, because that's important. If I know it is a C-level and all, then I have to have a different tone of voice or a presentation method or communication method when I'm dealing with designers or early stage designers or folks who are early in their career, maybe there's a different way of presenting things or communicating things. So it's really important to understand the companies or the audiences you are dealing with. And even, sometimes when I am doing that internally, I don't know everyone I'm presenting to. So I just quickly, go over their profile just to understand what they do and all of those things. So know your audience. As a UX designer or as a product designer, you are always told, who are you designing for? Know your designer, know your audience. Do the same thing with your communication. Know your audience, who you are talking to or who you are presenting to. The moment you know that, it will become very easy, to start building on that. Let me tell you a story. Many years back, you know, I think that was my first conference when I presented, and I had zero value, understanding of, who my audience and all is. And I was very early in my career. I had no understanding about anything, and I was very excited to speak in this conference. I pitched, and they accepted, and I just went and I presented. And I thought I did a great job with whatever I did. And of course, we are in our own bios, we are in our own bubble, and we think like, yes, we are doing great unless someone gives us feedback. So after the conference, those folks were really great, and they actually sent me the feedback. They sent everyone the feedback, and they sent me the feedback about the speaker ratings, and my rating was the second last from like 50 plus speakers. I was the most terrible speaker in that list.
So, so hold on right there. You get this, you ask for the feedback, or they ask the audience for the feedback. You ask for the feedback as well to get that information. You find out that you are the second lowest rated speaker at the conference. What was the conference?
It was a meta refresh in India, and there were like 1,000 plus participants out there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good job. And so, and so, how did you feel after that?
So I felt terrible, and I was like, wow, I thought I did great. I aced it. I felt confident, and I did everything I can. And then the rating tells me completely different story. So then I realized, like, I'm living in my own bubble. I'm thinking because I understand everything, if the other person also understands. Maybe, I was not telling it to their level. Maybe they were feeling too basic with the concept because the audience were too advanced, or maybe it was the other way around. And that is when I realized, like, knowing your audience is really important when you are presenting. And that was my first lesson. And that's how I started doing, like, I, putting all my UX practices into what I do and present. That's what I started doing.
So we have a fan here, Alex Salas, and you know what? I'm going to be doing a podcast with Alex next week. I'm almost thinking that it might be a good idea to have you on that podcast with us. Let's see what Alex says, because you're creating all this incredible online content and invested quite heavily in it for your program. So I think that would be cool. Good morning, Alex. So let's go back to that. And the reason that I want to focus on the feelings is because many people will never do another conference again once they get that kind of feedback. What made you fell down, your ego got bruised. It was like you were not at the same conference as the rest of these other people, right? Where were they? I was fantastic. So what made you get up and do it again?
So I'm one of those people, oh my God, I hear my own voice. Do you hear that?
Yeah, there's feedback on your end.
Yeah, I hope this is better now. So I'm one of those person, like, who never takes no for an answer. So if I fall down or anything, I will want to get up and want to do better. I will always try to push for that kind of thing. I like to challenge myself. I can never take a no for an answer. So I'll keep nudging you until, there is a from your end. So the same thing, the moment I saw the feedback, I was terrified. I was, demotivated. I was everything, all the feelings were gushing. And then I felt like, wow, this is terrible, but what do I do? How do I make it right for myself? What do I do? And that's when I started doing things, what I can. The first thing I did was, and my husband can tell you more about this thing, I would stand in front of the camera and then just speak. I would just speak in front of the camera or, in front of the mirror, and I would just speak like, okay, just the basic things. I would have a question. I will pose a question to myself and I will speak and I will see what is my body language. How am I telling that? I would record my sessions. I would listen to those sessions and I would be like, okay, where am I doing wrong? Where I have to fix and things like that. So I started working on, most of the things which doesn't seem very practical, but those are all very important for an individual because not every person is your spouse or a family member and they will not understand who you are and where you are
Right.
coming from.
So we're at the 20-minute mark. I want to level set the room here for just a second and check our technology. Shyamala, there's really a lot of feedback coming out from your end. And somehow the camera moved on you. Can you lower it so that the words don't cover the lower half of your face? There you go. I love the man. We just address and adopt, assess and correct as we go along. So again, this is Voice Chat Friday. We've got about 10 minutes left with Shyamala Prayaga. For those of you who don't know and who are watching, Shyamala is the head of Ford's autonomous vehicle line for conversational AI design. She is an international speaker, and she is the founder of the Digital Assistant Academy. She's on a mission to make sure that the next generation of voice designers knows what the hell they're doing, because when she started, there was nothing. And today we're talking about storytelling, and the importance of it. So Shyamala, I want to go down that. I want to get you back on your story. So you flop. Hi, Margaret. Yes, she is. Margaret saying it's exciting to hear from a lifelong learner with a growth mindset. Shyamala, your passion is inspiring. I believe it. Yes, it is. Thank you, Margaret, for joining us. So I want to go back to this story. So you go there, you fall down. You're the second lowest rated person of the conference. For me, it would be an immediate trip to Baskin Robbins with a tablespoon and then lock the door behind me. So I know that you did not do that. You got right back to work and you took that feedback seriously. What did you do specifically to improve your speaking skills?
I did a couple of things, like I mentioned, right? So I started understanding my audiences better. So, what I started doing was, first of all, did more research about my target audience, who I'm speaking. My UX mindset always comes, so I started adopting the UX practices, like know your audiences, research about them. So that's what I did first. The next thing I started working on is my articulation skill set. So, I would just pose a question to myself and I would write it down. So I still remember, I used to create questions and answers like, okay, what if this question comes? How would I respond to that? And all of those things. In terms of the presentation itself, I started creating an outline. So when you are creating any project document, you are creating an outline of the project document first. Like this is the table of content. Create a table of content for your presentation, like whether you're presenting to a stakeholder or a management or whoever. So that's what I started doing. I started creating my own table of content, like these are the things which I have to talk about, and then just fill in the information like with the graphics, the stories, or whatever you want to from there on. And that's what I started doing. And in terms of getting the confidence back and knowing how I'm speaking, how much pause I'm doing, what is causing people to like what was the cause of the rating. Was it the presentation itself, or was it my body language? Was it how I was speaking? All of those things. So I would stand in front of the mirror and then just talk. Or I would just record whatever I was talking and I would listen back to it and I would listen to it from an audience standpoint. Like, put yourself in your user's shoe. That's what we do in UX, right? Put yourself in your user's shoe. I would record the entire thing and I would listen from a non-biased standpoint, and that's when I would understand the areas where I have to improve, and I would go back. Believe me, it was terrible in first to listen to my own voice. I would feel very, very odd to do that, but now I got used to listening to my voice. I do podcast and edit them, so
Yeah, and so I put down you actually have 5 things that you did. So you're looking at, in fact, I think Alex put up here the initial, and I do want to touch on these. So everything that you talked about kind of wraps up in this. It's the practice of delivering the purpose to the right people in a format, in a flow that delivers value. So that's what that statement says to me right there. And I think that's probably the biggest takeaway from today is know your purpose, understand that your purpose aligns to the audience. I'm going to make a good point here. Make sure that the flow of your conversation makes sense to that audience, right? And it's not hopping all over the place. And make sure that everything that you do has value, that it leads to the point of your being there. What is the outcome? What's the result? I do want to talk about something that is not spoken of, is not addressed as often anymore. And it's the presence that we carry. Some people walk into the room and they automatically have that presence. I mean, you know they're there. There's just something about, it's like Tony Robbins. When Tony Robbins walks into a room, you know Tony's there. He doesn't have to say a word. He's just got to walk in, right? How do you build that? And Shyamala, you do that when you walk up on stage, right? People will go, okay, he's creating the car that's eventually going to take me from point A to point B without any of my assistance. so what, and my physical assistance. So what is it that you do to get yourself in that mindset that says, I am confident, I know what I'm talking about, let me help these people? What do you
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So what I do is I practice affirmations a lot, that puts me in that mindset first of all. So I do every morning, I have my own rituals and I do that. I do my meditation, I do my yoga, I do my affirmations. And my affirmations are just the confidence building and constantly telling myself, like, I'm doing good, I'm better, confidence building, whatever it is. I constantly do that. So the affirmations, they are so strong in my mind that automatically it helps me. I'm being loved, or I'm being seen as a celebrity in the industry. I have these kind of affirmations, which I constantly stick to every day, and those really help me reach to the point, where I am, because that sets the right mindset for me from the beginning. And no matter, this is not something I do when I'm going to the conference. I do this every day, so this has become a part of my practice, right? And that's one thing what I do. And it's great to see, when I go out and speak to people, they see the positive sides, they see all the great things. So that's how I kind of build those kind of mindset, I would say, right? I'm a very introvert person for people who don't know me. Although I speak in conferences and I speak so out front, people might think that I'm very extrovert, but people who know me knows I'm very introvert. So when I go to conferences, I feel very uncomfortable, just interacting with a group of people who I don't know or hang out with them. So I learned to get out of my comfort zone and speak to these people if needed, just to make my presence available. And that's how I started doing first. And now I don't have to, because I've created a brand. And I think personal branding is equally important. You have to work on your personal branding no matter what, because people will brand you regardless of who you think you are, and you need to decide how you want to be branded.
Wow. All right, we've only got about a minute left, so I'm going to ask you another kind of personal question here, and for our audience, none of this is scripted. These morning chats, none of these are scripted. So Shyamala is being caught off guard with every question that I ask. So one of the things that when I talk to candidates, right, when I interview them, when I hear them in their portfolio, they have this fear of failure. I can hear it in their voices. Before they even try, they've got this fear of failure. What would you say to help get them past that?
The failure is nothing. The fear of failure is nothing. It is your imposter syndrome kicking in, that's it. So you need to get over that. You need to build confidence. You need to make sure that you understand the potential. Look at your journey. Every person has a story. It's not just me, right? Every person has a story from where they came and where they are right now. Look at your journey, and that will give you so much confidence. Like, you have achieved great things in your life, and you can achieve more. Just do that, nothing else. You don't have to do anything else. Because I can tell you 100 different things to do, but you need to change your mindset, and you can change your mindset only by looking at the positives and not the negatives. It's very easy for us to get carried away by the negative instances which are happening in our life. Oh, I got rejected so many times. I remember, like I was rejected by Google once, and I was terrified. And I was like, oh my God, Google rejected me, and I did not have the skill sets. And it happened once, it happened twice. And after that, the third time, I built on the skill sets. I was offered, although I chose Ford over Google because I didn't join. I felt Ford was a better option with all the things. That was the stage, where Google offered me. I rejected the offer, and from there on, every quarter, the hiring, the recruiter would message me, and he would be like, "Are you ready to join us back? Or are you ready now?" And I can show you the emails. Like every quarter, he constantly checks in. So I went over my fear, whatever fear I had, I just went over that. I built whatever skill sets are required. Like when I was rejected, I was like, why am I getting rejected from Google? What are the skill sets which are missing? I worked on those skill sets, and then I was successful. And I knew, okay, I am built for a company like Google, but then I decided not to. And now when the recruiter messages me every now and then, like every quarter, he does a check-in. He's like, okay, every time you want to come in, just let us know. Now I feel great about these things because yes, I've created a value for myself in that company, you know. So
And
that is what you have to work on. You
the
need to,
company that rejected you is now chasing you.
yeah.
I love it. All right. Well, we are over by 1 minute and 34 seconds. I'm sorry, dear audience, but thank you all for hanging in there. I appreciate all your time. Have a wonderful afternoon. Next Friday will be another Voice Chat Friday with Shyamala, and I believe we might have a guest. So we'll surprise you all with that. Have a fabulous day and a remarkable weekend. Talk to you next week. Bye.
Thank you everyone who joined. Thank